Pizza began as food for Naples' working poor. Today, it is dinner around the world. The journey between those tables runs through migration, war, restaurant chains, freezers, and a contradiction built into pizza itself. Most foods become easier to reproduce once their differences have been stripped away. Pizza moved in the opposite direction. Businesses standardized the dough, ovens, boxes, and delivery systems. Customers kept changing the toppings. The form stayed recognizable. The flavors multiplied. So this story is bigger than the argument over who invented pizza. Ancient people baked seasoned flatbreads for thousands of years. Naples produced something more specific. An inexpensive urban meal that was portable, quickly baked, and endlessly adjustable. Migrants carried it abroad. Soldiers encountered it during war. Manufacturers worked out how to freeze it. Restaurant chains turned it into a repeatable system. And wherever pizza arrived, local cultures made room for their own version. To see why that worked, we have to start with food that could be folded into one hand and carried through a crowded Neapolitan street. Flatbread is one of humanity's oldest practical food technologies. Grind grain, mix the flour with water, press or stretch the dough, then place it against a heated surface. The result travels better than porridge, cooks faster than a thick loaf, and can carry oil, herbs, cheese, meat, or whatever else happens to be available. Civilizations around the Mediterranean and Near East ate breads that can look strikingly pizza-like to modernize. Greek and Roman sources describe flatbreads dressed with oil, cheese, herbs, and other toppings. Archaeological evidence shows people combining grain and heat long before Naples existed as the city we recognize. Resemblance, though, is not identity. Calling every seasoned ancient flatbread a pizza is like calling every wheeled cart an automobile. The ancestry is real, the modern category is not. The word pizza appears in medieval Italian records centuries before the familiar tomato-topped food, but those references do not provide an unbroken recipe leading neatly to a modern pizzeria. One ingredient makes the difference impossible to ignore. The tomato came from the Americas. After Spanish expansion connected the Americas more violently and permanently with Europe in the 16th century, tomato plants crossed the Atlantic. They were part of the vast biological exchange that moved crops, animals, diseases, and people between continents. Europeans grew tomatoes before they widely accepted them as everyday food. The plant belonged to the nightshade family, which included species already known to be poisonous, and attention from elite botanists did not immediately produce widespread culinary trust. Different places adopted tomatoes at different speeds, and the change was gradual. The tomato did not arrive in Europe with a label identifying it as the future foundation of Italian cooking. People had to plant it, watch it, select it, sell it, and work it into local habits. Europe spent a surprisingly long time staring at one of its future culinary icons before deciding what dinner could do with it. By the 18th century, tomatoes had become increasingly important in southern Italian cooking. In Naples, they met an older bread tradition and a city under enormous pressure. Naples was one of Europe's largest cities. Its population grew rapidly while large numbers of residents lived with insecure work, crowded housing, and little access to the private kitchens later generations would take for granted. Laborers, port workers, messengers, vendors, and others moving through the streets needed hot, cheap, filling food that did not require a formal dining room. Pizza met that need with ruthless efficiency. Dough supplied the bulk. A little oil, garlic, cheese, fish, lard, or tomato supplied the flavor. High heat turned the combination into a meal within minutes. It could be sold whole or in portions, eaten immediately, and adjusted to whatever ingredients and money were available. The crucial invention, then, was not one topping. It was the architecture. A flat, edible base carried strong flavors in economical amounts. That base could remain familiar even as the flavors changed. Naples provided the ingredients and the urban demand. Its vendors gave pizza its first complete social identity. Early Neapolitan pizza was not the carefully plated symbol later promoted to tourists. It belonged to streets, shops, and the daily rhythms of a city where many customers needed food more urgently than ceremony. Pizzaioli, pizza makers, produced rounds in different combinations, shaped partly by season, partly by custom, and very often by price. Some pizzas carried little more than oil and garlic. Others included lard, grated cheese, small fish, or tomato. That range did not mean the food lacked a definition. Variation had been part of the definition from the start. Vendors carried pizzas through neighborhoods and sold them to people who could eat without sitting at a table. A small pizza could be folded so its toppings stayed enclosed and the food could be held in one hand. Folding was not invented for dramatic cheese pulls on social media. It solved practical problems involving movement, heat, space, and work. Written observers noticed the connection between pizza and the city's poorer residents. In 1843, the French writer Alexandre Dumas published The Coricolo, an account of Naples that described pizza as food eaten by the Lazzaroni, a term commonly applied to the city's poor. He listed toppings ranging from oil and cheese to tomatoes and small fish, and emphasized that the price changed according to what was added. Dumas was an outsider, and his writing carried the assumptions of a 19th-century traveler. Even so, his account gives us valuable evidence. Pizza was already understood as a variable food, with its toppings forming a ladder of affordability. The menu changed with the customer's means, not according to a manifesto on culinary purity. A few years later, Francesco de Burcard's extensive work on the customs of Naples described pizza preparation and named familiar combinations. These accounts do not capture every vendor or every neighborhood practice. Together, however, they show that by the middle of the 19th century, pizza was a recognizable part of Neapolitan life. Cheap prepared food also came with systems of credit. The practice, later remembered as pizza a otto, pizza paid for after a delay, fits the broader reality of customers whose hunger arrived before their wages. The exact terminology and details need careful handling because later storytelling can turn flexible local customs into tidy traditions. The economic setting is firmly supported. Pizza served people for whom even a low price mattered. That setting should not be made picturesque. Crowding and unstable income were not charming ingredients added for authenticity. Pizza flourished because it answered conditions that were often hard. It concentrated heat, grain, and flavor into a form suited to people with little time, space, or money. This also explains one of pizza's defining traits before it ever left Naples. It did not depend on a luxurious ingredient or a fixed ceremonial recipe. Its structure survived substitution, more cheese or less, tomato or no tomato, fish when it was available, garlic when garlic was enough. Pizza could change without becoming unrecognizable. A food built for a crowded city might have stayed a local specialty. But in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, people began leaving southern Italy in enormous numbers. Pizza moved because Neapolitans and other Italians moved. Before we follow them, there is one famous story to deal with. A queen, a tricolor topping, and an unusually convenient birth certificate. According to the familiar account, the pizza maker Raffaele Esposito prepared several pizzas for Queen Margherita of Italy in 1889. One combined red tomato, white mozzarella, and green basil, matching the colors of the Italian flag. The Queen supposedly preferred it, and the combination was given her name. It is an elegant story, almost too elegant. A royal letter associated with the event survives, but historians have questioned its handwriting, seal, wording, and provenance. More importantly, Descriptions of pizzas made with tomato, mozzarella, and basil predate the supposed royal invention. Esposito could not have created the combination from nothing by arranging 3 national colors. None of that requires discarding the whole episode. A royal visit, or a later royal association, could still have reshaped pizza's public meaning. The deeper point is that the Margherita story turned a Neapolitan street food into something people could narrate as Italian. National symbols are not always born when their ingredients first meet. Sometimes an existing food becomes a symbol when it receives a new story. Italy was itself a relatively young, unified state, and regional identities remained powerful. Pizza belonged especially to Naples. But as emigrants left the peninsula, foods associated with individual towns and regions were increasingly gathered under the broader label of Italian. Millions of Italians migrated overseas in the decades around the turn of the 20th century, many of them from the South. They went to the United States, Argentina, Brazil, and other destinations, carrying food knowledge that rarely appeared on official cargo lists. Recipes traveled through memory, technique, family labor, and the expectation of what a satisfying meal ought to taste like. In American cities, pizza first took root where Italian immigrant communities created enough demand to sustain bakers, grocers, restaurants, and neighborhood food businesses. New York became the best-known center, but pizza also developed in New Haven, Boston, Philadelphia, and other industrial cities with substantial Italian populations. The history is considerably messier than the plaques on restaurant walls. Lombardi's in New York is often called the first pizzeria in the United States, based on a city license issued to Gennaro Lombardi in 1905. That license matters. It does not prove that nobody sold pizza before it was issued. Researchers examining directories, licenses, newspapers, and business records have found evidence of earlier sellers and commercial activity before the neat 1905 starting date. Just as with the Margherita story, the word first compresses a gradual transition into one memorable name. The system forming around these businesses matters more. American flour behaved differently. The supply of cheese changed. Coal-fired bakery ovens, commercial spaces, customer expectations, and local regulations all affected the pizzas being made. In New Haven, New York, and elsewhere, regional styles grew from particular ovens, immigrant traditions, available ingredients, and patterns of service. Pizza had crossed the Atlantic, but it had not made the journey unchanged. Migration preserved the basic form while producing new versions almost at once. For years, pizza remained closely tied to Italian neighborhoods. Non-Italian customers encountered it, certainly, but it was not yet an ordinary national dinner. That change needed wider familiarity, new household technology, and businesses capable of separating pizza from the exact place and moment where it was baked. The Second World War accelerated the process. Allied service members stationed or fighting in Italy encountered local food under circumstances that varied widely by location and unit. Later accounts sometimes turn this into a single dramatic moment when American soldiers discovered pizza. But Americans had eaten pizza for decades, and Italian-American communities did not need the military to introduce them to their own food. Wartime exposure did, however, broaden familiarity. Returning service members came home to a country entering a period of suburban growth, rising automobile ownership, expanding supermarkets, and changing eating habits. Italian-American foods were becoming visible beyond the neighborhoods that had kept them alive. Household refrigeration was changing too. Freezer compartments became more common, frozen food distribution improved, and supermarkets gave more room to products designed to wait at home until somebody needed them. Pizza was not naturally cooperative. Fresh pizza relies on a carefully timed relationship among dough, moisture, heat, and toppings. Freeze the assembled food, store it, transport it, then bake it again, and every component creates a problem. Water can move from the sauce into the crust. Cheese can dry out or heat unevenly. Toppings may release moisture while the base is still trying to crisp. A restaurant pizza needs to survive for minutes. A frozen pizza must survive a factory, a freezer, a truck, a supermarket, another freezer, and an ordinary home oven. Quite a career for a circle of dough. Rose and Jim Totino approached this problem through a restaurant, not a laboratory. In 1951, they opened Totino's Italian Kitchen in Minneapolis. Rose Totino, the daughter of Italian immigrants, helped build pizza into a successful business in a city far from America's oldest pizza centers. One frequently repeated story says that their banker did not understand pizza when the couple sought financing, so Rose baked one for him. Reliable accounts of her career include the story, though its polished form is best treated as a remembered business anecdote rather than a transcript of the room. What is well established is that the restaurant found customers. That demand suggested pizza could travel beyond the restaurant, if the Totinos could solve the physical problem of preserving it. They were not the first to freeze pizza. Several entrepreneurs and food companies experimented with frozen pies during the post-war period, and naming a single inventor would turn a field of overlapping attempts into yet another convenient legend. The Totinos mattered because they helped make frozen pizza a large and durable commercial category. In the early 1960s, they moved into frozen production. Doing so meant treating pizza less as a restaurant dish and more as a coordinated material system. The crust could be partially baked. Sauce thickness and water content could be controlled. Cheese and toppings could be chosen and distributed for predictable heating. Rapid freezing could reduce the formation of large ice crystals that damage texture. Packaging could protect the food as it moved through a cold chain. The accomplishment was not making pizza cold. It was making the reheated result recognizable. Frozen pizza separated production from immediate consumption. The person shaping the dough no longer had to occupy the same building, city, or even region as the person eating it. Manufacturers could produce large batches and distribute them over long distances. The customer needed only storage, an oven, and a little patience. Pillsbury later acquired Totino's, and Rose Totino went on to hold a significant leadership role in the corporation. Her career became a human hinge in a much larger change. Restaurant demand exposed the opportunity. Food engineering made the product portable through time. Corporate distribution expanded the market. Pizza had escaped the pizzeria. An entire industrial system could now grow around it. That system was not a single machine or company. Repeatability had to be assembled from dozens of separate parts. Post-war restaurant chains showed how rapidly the concept could scale. Shakey's began in 1954. Pizza Hut followed in 1958. Little Caesars in 1959. And the Michigan business that became Domino's began in 1960. Their menus, service, and strategies differed, but their basic ambition was the same: make pizza reproducible across many locations. Franchising provided the method. A company could specify dough formulas, portion sizes, sauce ratios, equipment, store layouts, cooking times, training, and approved suppliers. It did not need to reproduce every movement of a Neapolitan pizzaiuolo. It needed to produce an acceptable pizza reliably, even when workers learned inside the company's system rather than through years of apprenticeship. Ovens changed to match that goal. Traditional Neapolitan pizza uses very high heat and rapid baking, with the baker managing fire, dough, and timing. American pizzerias adopted many kinds of ovens, including coal, gas, and electric designs. Gas deck ovens gave operators more predictable conditions. Later, conveyor ovens carried pizzas through a controlled heating chamber at a fixed speed, reducing variation while increasing throughput. The effects were immediate. Workers were easier to train. Output became more predictable. New locations depended less on one highly specialized baker. Ingredients became standardized too. Operators could choose flour for consistent protein content. Dough could be mixed according to timed procedures. Sauce arrived with a defined texture and seasoning. Cheese could be shredded and portioned. Supplier networks reduced the number of decisions made separately inside every store. Pizza still remained modular. A restaurant could add or remove toppings without rebuilding the whole production system. The chain standardized the platform. The order ticket supplied the variation. Packaging finished another part of the job. Corrugated cardboard boxes offered a lightweight container that could be stacked and carried while releasing at least some heat and moisture. A box could not keep pizza identical to the instant it left the oven. It could, however, make transportation practical. Telephone ordering, increasing automobile ownership, suburban development, and delivery networks changed pizza from somewhere people went into a meal that came home. Dinner had become a logistics problem with cheese on top. Delivery altered pizza's social role. It suited families, parties, students, workplaces, and informal gatherings because one large round could be divided with almost no ceremony. Nobody needed serving expertise. The box was a container, a tray, and a temporary table. Cleanup was minimal. Pizza fit households that wanted hot food without preparing a complete meal. Frozen production advanced along a parallel route. Manufacturers improved par baking, rapid freezing, moisture control, topping application, and packaging. As supermarket freezer sections expanded, pizza gained a permanent place in retail. It could wait for the customer, instead of making the customer wait for the restaurant. No single development explains national adoption. Not the oven, not the box, the freezer, the franchise agreement, the telephone, or the automobile. Together they produced coordinated repeatability. Production repeated. Pizza traveled farther. The wait grew shorter. It entered the home. Industrialization standardized pizza's grammar more firmly than its vocabulary. There was a base and a savory layer. There was usually cheese, though even that could change. Other ingredients could be placed on top. The system knew how to assemble, heat, package, and sell the form without requiring one exact sentence. That difference mattered even more once pizza moved beyond Italy and the United States. Its international expansion followed several routes. Italian migration had already carried pizza traditions abroad. Tourism introduced regional foods to travelers. Military presence and post-war American influence exposed new audiences to Americanized versions. Restaurant chains entered foreign markets. Refrigeration, urbanization, commercial baking, and global supply networks made wheat flour, tomato products, cheese, and processed toppings more consistently available. No single route brought pizza to every country. Independent restaurants came first in some places. Elsewhere, immigrant communities developed their own traditions before large chains appeared. In still others, global brands made the word pizza familiar while local operators changed its meaning. The common mechanism was adaptation, repeated again and again. One of the best documented, and most fiercely argued over, examples began in Ontario, Canada. In 1962, Sam Panopoulos, a Greek-born restaurateur, put canned pineapple and ham on a pizza at the Satellite restaurant in Chatham. Panopoulos later said that he and his colleagues were experimenting with sweet and savory combinations. The name Hawaiian came from the brand of canned pineapple they used, not from an old Hawaiian pizza tradition. The experiment became an international dispute large enough to make its origin sound more solemn than it was. Pineapple entered the story because a restaurant had canned fruit on hand, and somebody decided to try it. Pizza absorbed the change. Diners handled the rest. That episode shows why the format works. The crust supplies a stable physical base. Sauce, cheese, oil, and fat spread flavor. Toppings can change without altering the basic method of ordering, sharing, baking, or recognizing the food. In India, pizza adapted to a market shaped by strong vegetarian traditions, religious dietary boundaries, regional spice preferences, and a well-established vocabulary of breads and dairy foods. Paneer, a firm, fresh cheese, could fill the role occupied elsewhere by meat toppings. Tandoori seasonings, chilies, onions, and familiar local sauces gave customers flavors they already knew. International chains took part in this localization, but independent restaurants and home cooks made their own versions as well. The result was more than an American pizza decorated with one Indian ingredient. Menu design, kitchen separation, meat choices, spice levels, and vegetarian expectations could reshape the entire commercial offer. The platform stayed recognizable. Local food culture established many of the rules. Japan became another field of adaptation. Pizza developed there through post-war cultural exchange, restaurants, imported ideas, and later the growth of chains. Japanese menus have included combinations using seafood, corn, mayonnaise-based sauces, and teriyaki flavors. These toppings look surprising only when one particular pizza is treated as the neutral center. Within the local market, they connect pizza with familiar tastes, textures, and prepared ingredients. Brazil created an especially expansive pizza culture, shaped by Italian immigration, urban restaurant life, and regional preferences. Brazilian pizzas may include hearts of palm, corn, eggs, cured meats, and creamy cheeses, including preparations associated with catupiry-style cheese. The history of any one combination can be hard to assign to a single inventor, and there is no reason to pretend an entire country's pizza culture began with one inspired moment. The pattern matters more. A shared form became a vehicle for local abundance and appetite. Religion shaped which meats were acceptable. Agriculture determined what was affordable. Processing industries affected what could arrive consistently. Restaurant customs influenced thickness, portioning, and service. Price determined how much cheese or meat went on top. Pizza offered enough structure to keep all those variations legible. Industrial chains learned the same lesson. Entering a new market did not always mean exporting one fixed menu unchanged. Companies adjusted toppings, spice levels, meat handling, vegetarian options, portion sizes, and promotional language. Localization became part of standardization. That sounds like a contradiction, but it sits at the center of pizza's global success. A chain could standardize purchasing, food safety, ovens, preparation, branding, and service, while allowing certain ingredients to vary from market to market. The operation remained reproducible. The meal felt less foreign. Local variation did not necessarily weaken recognition. Often, it encouraged adoption. Customers met a form already identified as pizza, but it carried flavors belonging to their own food culture. The same meal could feel novel and familiar at once. The central claim is now visible. Industrialization did not spread pizza by locking its identity in place. It spread a stable framework capable of surviving controlled change. Migration carried techniques and memories. Commercial systems broadened access. Local tastes finished the adoption. But if pizza can change its dough, sauce, cheese, toppings, thickness, oven, and style of service, where does adaptation stop? When does pizza become little more than a name attached to an unrelated food? That question takes us back to Naples, where people organized to protect a far more specific tradition. In 1984, the Associazione Verace Pizza Napolitana was founded to promote and safeguard what it defined as true Neapolitan pizza. Its rules codified ingredients, dough handling, shaping, fermentation, oven conditions, baking, and the qualities expected in the finished product. Those standards answered a real historical problem. Once the word pizza could describe factory products, thick American pan pizzas, delivery pies, and countless local versions, the particular craft of Naples risked disappearing inside the category it had helped create. Neapolitan practice relies on relationships that industrial systems intentionally simplify. The dough is shaped by hand. Fermentation influences flavor and structure. The pizza enters an extremely hot oven and bakes quickly. The pizzaiuolo judges the dough, flame, position, and timing. The finished pizza is meant to be eaten shortly after baking, not kept inside a delivery bag or stored for months. European protection added another formal layer. Pizza Napolitana received traditional specialty guaranteed recognition within the European Union, protecting a defined traditional character and method of production, rather than reserving every use of the word pizza for Naples. That difference matters. The registration did not declare every other pizza fraudulent. It identified one tradition whose name and method could be described through legal standards. In 2017, UNESCO inscribed the art of the Neapolitan pizzaiuolo on its representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. UNESCO recognized a living cultural practice involving knowledge, gestures, songs, social exchange, and transmission between generations. It did not convene a global trial to decide whether pineapple counted as admissible evidence. These protections show that pizza now occupies two categories at the same time. It is a regional craft rooted in Naples, with techniques and meanings worth preserving. It is also a global food format capable of radical adaptation. Treating those categories as identical wipes away real differences. A factory pizza reheated from frozen is not materially the same as a hand-shaped Neapolitan pizza baked rapidly at very high heat. The dough develops differently. Moisture behaves differently. The crust, service time, labor, and eating experience all differ. The opposite conclusion is too simple as well. Variation does not automatically erase continuity. A locally adapted pizza can retain the structural logic that made the Neapolitan food so useful. Dough as an edible platform, intense heat, concentrated flavor, portability, division, and flexible toppings. Authenticity, then, is not a scientific switch that flips from yes to no. It is a cultural judgment tied to place, method, community, memory, and expectation. Formal standards can protect one tradition without accounting for every legitimate use of the wider category. Industrialization cannot claim all the credit for pizza's reach either. Migration carried the food before large chains existed. Rising incomes expanded restaurant markets. Urban schedules increased demand for convenient meals. Tourism and media circulated images and expectations. Agricultural and processing systems supplied flour, tomatoes, cheese, meat, and vegetables on an enormous scale. American commercial influence gave certain forms exceptional visibility. Industry mattered because it made pizza reproducible across distance and time. It was never the only force at work. Even the word conquered needs some restraint. Pizza's cultural reach is extraordinary, but it did not win a measurable contest on a particular date. It entered different markets through different histories and became ordinary at different speeds. Its conquest was cumulative. One migration route, one neighborhood, one restaurant, one freezer aisle, one delivery zone, and one adapted menu after another. Put those pieces together, and the route from Naples comes into focus. Early pizza worked because it was inexpensive, fast, portable, and variable. Industry did not remove those qualities. It learned how to scale them. The arrival of the tomato created a new topping, but tomatoes alone did not create modern pizza. Naples supplied the urban conditions that made the combination useful. A dense city supplied customers who needed hot food without a formal kitchen or dining room. Vendors supplied mobility. Pizzaioli supplied technique. Variation supplied affordability. Migration pulled pizza away from the city that had shaped it. Italians carried the food into new neighborhoods, where different flour, cheese, ovens, and customers began to alter it. Pizza became Italian abroad partly because distance compressed regional identities. It became American in several regional forms because immigrant food entered new commercial and social systems. Wartime encounters broadened recognition. Post-war restaurants expanded access. Freezers separated baking from eating. Franchises separated expansion from apprenticeship. Standardized ingredients reduced variation wherever businesses needed predictability. Boxes, telephones, automobiles, and delivery systems brought the meal to the customer. International markets changed it once more. Paneer could replace meat. Teriyaki could enter the vocabulary of sauces. Brazilian cheeses could alter the texture and richness. Pineapple could turn a practical experiment with canned fruit into an argument that refuses to die. Naples assembled it. Migrants carried it. Industry stabilized it. Local cultures remade it. That sequence explains how pizza became the world's dinner more accurately than any tale centered on one inventor, queen, soldier, or corporation. Its global identity did not require one recipe to remain untouched. It required a recognizable structure that could endure repeated change. The crust stayed a platform. The toppings stayed negotiable. Pizza could be made by hand, produced on a line, served in a restaurant, carried in a box, or kept in a freezer. Every system changed it, sometimes dramatically. Every system also relied on the same practical design that had fed the streets of Naples. Go back finally to that small pizza folded in one hand. It belongs to a particular city and history. It is not identical to a frozen supermarket pizza, a chain delivery pie, or a version covered with ingredients a 19th-century Neapolitan vendor would never have seen. The dough may be different. The oven may be different. The labor, scale, and social meaning certainly are. Still, when you open a delivery box or lift a slice, the old structure remains visible. Grain became a portable base. Heat turned small amounts of flavorful ingredients into a complete meal. The food could be divided, carried, changed, and eaten with very little ceremony. Almost every system surrounding it has changed. The tomato crossed an ocean. Migrants crossed another. Ovens were standardized. Factories learned to control moisture. Freezers lengthened the time between production and dinner. Chains reproduced procedures across borders. Local cooks and customers filled the space on top with ideas of their own. Industrial systems made pizza more standardized. Global adoption made its flavors more diverse. That is not a flaw in pizza's history. It is what drove the history forward. Pizza became one of the world's most recognizable meals because it kept continuity and variation inside the same circle. Stable enough to reproduce. Flexible enough to belong somewhere new. If this history changed the way you see pizza, subscribe to The Hidden Course and share the turning point that surprised you most.